Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of What in the World is Happening, the show about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. We're very happy that you're here today. You're our secret sauce. You give the show legs. So thank you for joining us. I'm Sabina Qureshi, broadcasting from Edmonton, Canada. And with me today is our guest, Rich Teich, in the USA, San Francisco. Hi, Rich. How are you?
Oh, fine. Thank you, Sabina.
That's great. And I guess I'm excited about this show. As you can see from our image there, we're going to be talking about vast spaces. And I think that's something that excites everybody, the feeling of something unlimited, something enormous. I also want to mention that you can watch this program on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook, Share International Canada Facebook. And John, our chat show host, will be putting links in the chat so you can find all that information there. And at the end of the program, we'll do a half hour of meditation, transmission meditation, which is a group meditation for anybody over the age of 12. We hope you'll join us. I think you'll enjoy it. It's extremely stimulating and very, very simple to do. And so now to jump into this, the Constitution of Man, this is part 2. We did part 1 a few months ago. Rich was there at that time as well. We want to start out with some quotes that Rich suggested. So I'm going to read these out. Here's the first one. Having pervaded this entire universe with a fragment of myself, still I remain. Now that's from the Bhagavad Gita. I find it very beautiful. Let's go on to the next one. There is one boundless, immutable principle, one absolute reality, which antecedes all manifested conditioned being. It is beyond the range and reach of any human thought or expression. And that's from a treatise on cosmic fire by Alice A. Bailey. And now the conclusion of that quote. The manifested universe is contained within this absolute reality and is a conditioned symbol of it. So, Rich, I'd like you to comment on these quotes. You're the one who chose them. Tell us something about why you chose them.
Well, today's show, we wanted to focus on the Constitution of Man from more of a cosmic perspective of who are we in the universe. And so I thought that these would give the widest perspective of what we're about to go into, which you will see. And we're going to be linking the individual human beings and their self-consciousness with a universal consciousness that extends out to the limits of the universe. So that's why we're going to go on this voyage.
And so basically, we're going to be talking about what is, on this particular quote, they're talking about the manifested universe, right? That's the part we'll be talking about.
Yes. I think in the past, we were talking about the fact that our dense physical bodies that we see are only a small aspect of who we are. We have other more subtle bodies that were a part of the planet, part of the universe. We talk about the etheric body, the emotional or astral body, the mental body, and then even higher bodies that form part of the spiritual triad of the higher mind, the Buddhic, which is the love-wisdom aspect of ourselves, and then the Atmic, which is the will aspect of ourselves. And so these are beyond thought. So that's, when they're saying that this is the manifested universe is only a tiny portion of what we really have in our universe.
Wow, I love that. I really do. It just makes me feel kind of thrilled. So what we want to show is now kind of a big picture here. So you're saying all of this is just a tiny portion of the absolute reality, and yet it looks vast to me. I mean, starting with galaxies, my goodness. I mean, that's huge.
Yes. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
What you wanted to, you wanted to show that there's two processes going on, that from the highest levels of our experienced universe, what we can see from astronomy, with the galaxies, there's spiritual energy, spiritual stimulus for the evolution of consciousness pouring down from the highest levels, from galaxies down through the solar systems, down through the planets, down through the masters in the spiritual kingdom, down to humanity in the human kingdom, and then even below that. But the human kingdom is the beginning of what we call self-consciousness. The lower kingdoms do not have, they have consciousness. All of the kingdoms in nature have consciousness, but only the humans are the beginning of self-consciousness. So self-conscious beings go out throughout the universe, but beyond individual human beings or groups. So the energies, the spiritual stimulus coming from the higher energies throughout the universe are pouring in on the subtle levels, reaching down to all the kingdoms, the lower kingdoms, and as a result, stimulating them to evolve their consciousness. So that's what they're trying to represent here.
And as the title says, at all levels of cosmos, there is consciousness, purpose, and evolution. So it means even the atom with its level of consciousness has a purpose and is evolving, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the by individual consciousness, it means that you are guiding your own evolution consciously. And so these spiritual kings, the higher up you go on this, the wider their experience is, and behind it all is purpose. The mind itself is characterized by this quality of purposeful manifestation. So if you can think about, even galaxies have purpose, and that purpose permeates down through the stars and the solar systems in those galaxies. It permeates down to the planets and down through the kingdoms all the way down.
Yeah, it's actually mind-boggling. So now we want to focus, we're going to kind of narrow the focus and go down onto Earth. And this was sort of what you had described initially as the world we live in, and what our experience is. So our consciousness is evolving towards the spiritual kingdom. And describe a little bit, disciples and initiates, what's that?
Yes, in this snapshot, we're looking at kind of the world that we start off with the animal kingdom and early animal man, and then by the spiritual stimulus, it produces a process that produces individual consciousness in human beings, and so they become part of the human kingdom. But there's evolution that continues on in consciousness to become group conscious, and that's the state where the masters are. They're conscious of the being who ensouls this planet as the largest group we can conceive of. So in that process of going from the human kingdom into the spiritual kingdom, the intermediary kind of level there is what we would call disciples and initiates, people that we see in the world who have made some spiritual contribution in whatever field that they were in to humanity. So then they go through the initiatory process, and then they become masters, and so they are fully part of the spiritual kingdom.
And so these disciples and initiates, as you said, they could be in any field. When we use the word spiritual, it doesn't mean religious only or necessarily. So a disciple or initiate could be a scientist, philosopher, any type of work, right?
Yes. So when you see the different aspects of everyday life, where we have the political realm, the social realm, the economic realm, the scientific, the arts, anybody who's making a contribution to civilization and culture is being stimulated by the spiritual kingdom, the masters. And so they're working in the world, and we know them as people with lives, and we can see the contributions that they've made. And so they are one or other of disciples of the various masters along certain lines.
Okay, and so that can even be politicians, right?
Yes, politics, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. They have, by the way, they have the most difficult road.
Yeah, I think that's quite evident, especially lately. Yeah.
Yes.
So in terms of this evolution of consciousness, you have described it, and I think the Ageless Wisdom teaching describes it in this way, as a combination of two things. And how does this happen? Like spirit, life. What exactly is that?
Well, I guess as we were looking in that original quote, there's this boundless, immutable principle that's beyond concept. So that's that's basically the spirit, the energy which is manifesting through matter, and the joining of spirit and matter produces consciousness at all different levels. And so we as human beings are seeing a certain level of consciousness. Each person has a different level of consciousness about who they are. And then eventually people become aware that they are a soul, and they feel the stimulus of the soul, and they want to emerge and align themselves with that soul. And so that's the next phase of this evolutionary process.
And so the distinction between self-consciousness and consciousness refers to whether the person or the being has an individual awareness, and that means you're aware of yourself as an individual. Is that what that means?
Yeah, separate individuality. So you're
Hmm.
aware of yourself as separate. Consciousness is an aspect of the whole universe. So
Hmm.
it permeates everything in the universe that you see as a form, has some level of consciousness associated with it, down to the atoms.
Okay.
And as you work your way up, the mineral kingdom has a certain consciousness. The plant kingdom, the vegetable kingdom has a certain consciousness, which is more expanded. The animal kingdom, even more expanded, and then eventually being able to provide the vehicles for humanity coming out of the animal kingdom, and that merging from the higher principle, what we call the soul, produces individual self-consciousness, self-awareness.
And so the soul, you mentioned three qualities that are built into the soul: intelligence, love, wisdom, and will slash purpose. So these are qualities we see in all souls, right? To one degree or another. I mean, depending on how much they're developed.
Yes, in the souls, and so the individual personality at some point in its development will aspire to the qualities of the soul and want to merge with the soul and become divine.
Okay,
So they'll fully manifest those qualities.
right. I'm. I realize someone's getting rid of our snow outside, so that you might hear a bit of noise right now. There's a snowblower right outside the window, and it's a bit loud, uh, but I hope it's not disturbing. So, in terms of this evolutionary process, uh, the masters of wisdom, whom we've mentioned before, and Maitreya, who is sort of the head of that group, they are people like ourselves, but they've reached a different stage in their evolution. And we often say they've completed their evolutionary journey on Earth, meaning that there's nothing more for them to gain in terms of the growth of their consciousness by incarnating repeatedly as we do. But many of them stay here to help us. And these are the people who compose the spiritual hierarchy. That's what we call it. And they facilitate the evolution of us, humanity, through their disciples. And of course, that in turn is facilitating the evolution of all of the lower kingdoms as well, right? Because that stimulus flows down through each kingdom into the one below it.
Yes, and you see that opportunities through what we would call service. So the being who ensouls the planet is working out his purpose through the various kingdoms in nature. And where humanity is concerned, there's the 63 masters who are working in the human evolution. And so that purpose, which is at the center where the will of God is known, which we call Shambhala on the planet, is that energy is working through the spiritual hierarchy, and its purpose is to facilitate the human evolution and consciousness. So everything is working from some higher level down to some lower level, and the higher you go, the more complete the understanding of the purpose is.
That makes sense. So the higher you go, the bigger the picture is. I mean, the more, yeah, the more you
Yes,
see.
exactly.
Yeah.
So in meditation, for example, the goal is to develop a link between the lower concrete mind and the higher abstract mind. And the higher you go in the abstract mind, the bigger the picture.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, and what you're saying about higher and lower, on this slide, we're seeing like a pictorial representation of what we human beings are, in terms of that we have this highest level, which is called the monad, or the spark of God. That's the part of us that is part of God. It's the same substance, right? And then that is stepped down. The soul is the intermediary, also called the higher self sometimes, or the causal body. And then on the level that we perceive in our daily lives, on the physical dense level, we see our body, and there you have the personality, the lower self. You have your mental body, emotional body, physical body. So this same process, you can see it even just within what we are, right?
Yes. So your personality will eventually become aware that it's got some more higher aspect of itself, and it seeks to understand, become one with that higher, and that's we call this spiritual path. When somebody feels that they're drawn to something larger than themselves, it might start off with alignment with humanity as a humanitarian, want to help humanity in some way. So whatever field that you're in, you want to help people in the world. So that's the path of service. And so that leads you to the soul. And the soul embodies that the quality of purpose for all souls. And
Well, it's
the monad is that spark that eventually, the soul just being an intermediary, eventually the individual personality merges with that spark of God. And so the purpose that the individual feels is the one purpose of the being who ensouls the planet. So essentially, you are a spark. Eventually, like the masters are sparks in
mhm.
that being who ensouls the planet, and their will is one with the will of the planet.
So what you were just saying about service, uh, we have a question from Billy Sevchuk. Hi, Billy. Thanks for being here, and thank you for your question. Billy asks, what actions do we need to take to reach spiritual evolution? My first kind of response, and Rich, can you confirm this, is that even without taking any action, we are evolving, because it's the nature of consciousness, right, to evolve. But there are actions you can take to speed that up. And you mentioned service. And did you mention meditation as well?
Yes, meditation and service. Meditation will put you into connection with your soul, and then the soul will be guiding you in your life to how to serve best along whatever line of energies that you are, your personal destiny.
And when we talk about meditation, I think the next thing we want to mention here are the chakras. And we have many chakras in our body, but what we're looking at right now are the 7 main chakras, the most important, or the biggest ones. And can you describe what these are, and what is the etheric body?
Okay, the etheric body is made out of strands of subtle energies beyond the physical. And the chakras in the body, the main 7 ones, or all the chakras themselves, are basically little vortices of energy, like little energy fields that are in constant motion and circular, so they form chakras or wheels in Sanskrit. So these 7 are also aligned in the physical body with one of the ductless glands, starting with the pineal gland and the pituitary in the brain, all the way down to the adrenal glands. And so it's actually these particular group of glands are regulating the body through the bloodstream and through the nervous system in the brain. So that's how this all works down from the subtle levels in these chakras down to the dense physical body.
And so when we meditate, how does that relate to the chakras, meditation, that is?
Well, energy follows thought. So as you think about higher thoughts, higher aspects of being, and you focus the brain on the higher levels of these, for example, in the Ajna center. That's why in transmission meditation, you want to focus your center, your consciousness on the center between the eyebrows, which is where this Ajna center is in the etheric body. So by pulling your consciousness there and holding that there, it pulls all the energies below the Ajna center and focuses them in that center. So it basically becomes a clearinghouse for all the energies below the brain and the mind. So that's why the importance of focusing on that
And
center.
why is that a good thing to do? Like, why is it good to bring all those energies up to that point?
Well, this is part of the evolutionary process because these are all levels of consciousness. So in the beginnings, on the spiritual path, the energies that go to the sacral center will eventually go to the throat center. So you'll be pulling those energies up through your life. For example, whatever you do, if you're focusing on communications and trying to get goodwill out to people, it comes out through communications in some way, or through interactions with people, through writing or through speaking, that comes out through the throat. So you're pulling the energies of the sacral center, which is associated with physical recreation, into mental creation through the through the throat center. In the same way, individual emotions through the solar plexus are going to the heart center, and that's where you feel a oneness with humanity, through the heart center. So this is a part of the evolutionary process, reflected in the physical as well as in the spiritual realm.
Wow. It's amazing what is going on in our bodies and ourselves that we're generally not aware of. There's so
Yes.
much. And you wanted to now take this and expand. So we've kind of come down to looking at our individual selves, and now you want to kind of go zooming back out into larger and larger spheres. So I think the next thing we want to look at is the Earth,
Yeah,
the whole planet.
right. So if you see those seven chakras, you can keep those in mind. This extends throughout universe, this idea of seven centers of consciousness. So we'll see that in coming slides. By the way, in that picture of the woman or the man on the left, the chakras are there represented by those lights, but then you can see there's a representation of the etheric field around them with all those white lines. And so it basically is saying that there's a field around us, if you can think of an electromagnetic field, and that field is etheric and it extends out into space. And our bodies are constantly in a fluid connection of these energies pouring through us and around us and coming down from higher planes. And whatever you take in through your chakras are then stepped down to the environment in which you find yourself. So it's a constant flow of energy.
And so, even though we see our physical bodies as having a discrete end, like, my finger goes up to here, but not beyond here, what you're describing, this etheric body, this energy correspondence of our physical body, is fluid and open to the universe. I mean, it's got perhaps a boundary, but it's energetic. So it's not like there's a door that's closed there.
Yeah, if you can think of the magnetic field lines, if you put a magnet down on a piece of paper and you sprinkle some iron filings, you'll see some magnetic lines. So in the same way, the planet has a magnetic field, and so when you have a compass, you're basically tapping into the magnetic field of the planet. So in that same way, there's an etheric field that has different levels of etheric energy, and so we're part of the planet, part of its etheric field. And the etheric
Okay.
field of the planet is part of the planets in the solar system, as well as the sun. They all have these giant cosmic fields that we're a part of.
Okay. So this next picture of the Earth, um, this description, the mineral, vegetable, animal, human, and divine kingdoms make up the centers in the great spiritual being who ensouls the Earth. So you're saying all of these lives are centers similar to what we just saw, the chakras in our body or our system. You're saying we make up somehow like a corresponding centers or chakras in the body of this being.
Yes. So in the same way that the chakras go from being more dense to less dense as you go from bottom to top, the mineral kingdom is the most dense energy field on the planet. You can think of it as energy fields. The vegetable is above that, then the animal, and the human and divine. So they're all representing different types of energies, different energies which compose the entire planet. So the being who ensouls the planet has all of those fields in their experience, and there's a purpose that's being worked out through this planet. And so all we're seeing now is a snapshot of how the planet is developing from the human being's standpoint. What we experience in the world is not only through our senses, but also now through our media. So people are beginning to get a vision of the planet and all the people on the planet, the environment on the planet, what we're doing to it, our interaction with it, and that's coming through the mind. So that's why it's important the next thing is developing the mind and larger perspectives. So now we're seeing planetary wide perspectives. And so that's the development of the higher mind as we experience that.
And so in a sense, we are starting to function. I mean, humanity is starting to function almost like one big mind, right?
It
Um,
sees itself. Yes, it's
yeah.
beginning to see itself as one mind, and we're seeing the effects of what we do on the rest
Hmm.
of the planet.
Right. Okay. And then here you've got pictures of other planets. We've got Jupiter on the left and Saturn on the right. And the statement that each planet is a great spiritual being, just as the Earth, which is also a planet. But we see only the physical body, so we don't see the energetic or etheric body of these beings, just as we don't see our own etheric body. I suppose if you have etheric vision, you would see that, but most of us
Yes.
don't.
Also, what you don't see, just like human beings have not only etheric bodies, they have emotional astral bodies, they have mental
Mhm.
bodies,
Yeah.
and those are just parts of the various planets on which there's a humanity on every planet. And so there's an evolutionary goal for each one of the humanities on the various planets. And so we don't see that at all either. We just see our planet. The difference in our planet and all the other planets is that we're in a dense physical bodies. The people on the other planets are on subtle bodies.
So
But they have,
that's why
yeah, and they have civilizations just like we do at different levels of development, but they only are working on the etheric levels.
so that's why our probes and different types of vehicles that we send out into space and go exploring with, we don't they don't pick up signs of life. They can't see those
Right,
lives.
right, right.
Okay. Um, and then the sun is an even greater spiritual being. And now this name, the solar logos, where does this name come from?
Well, these are terminologies. The planetary logos, the solar logos. These are names from the Secret Doctrine, from Helena Blavatsky's magnum opus, the Secret Doctrine. The being who ensouls the solar system, we call the solar logos, encompasses all the levels of consciousness, from the subtle to the most gross, and that being, the solar logos, has a purpose which is working out through the individual planets, which are centers in the body. So just in the same way there are chakras in the body of the human being, there are chakras which are represented by planets in the body of the solar logos. So again, a higher level of purpose and development in the whole solar system. So the planets hold all the kingdoms in nature. They have each individual purpose, basically has been assigned by the logos to the evolution of all the forms, life forms on those planets. And the being who ensouls the sun has all of those levels of consciousness within itself, and a great purpose which lies even beyond the purview of the individual planets.
And so I just have a curiosity about the word logos. Is that English?
No, it's Greek.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a way of saying that there is an individuality.
Okay.
In the Bible, in the Greek New Testament, starts off with John, and it says, "In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God." Well, that Greek word is logos.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
So it
sense.
can have different translations.
Right. Okay. And then you also wanted to talk about um, the different planets in our solar system.
Yes. So in the same way that you saw that human beings have 7 major important chakras, which are associated with the 7 glands, well, in the same way there are 7 planets in the solar system that embody 7 different qualities of energy and consciousness. And so they are evolving to perfect those in the solar system. So they're referred to as the 7 sacred planets. So Jupiter, for example, is embodying the second ray of love and wisdom, or Saturn is embodying the qualities of intelligence, active intelligence, the third ray. So each planet has its own development that it's working on a certain line to perfect. So the sun has all those lines, but they're working out through the individual planets to perfect those qualities over the life of the solar system. Now, if you look at how this appears in time, then the solar system is estimated to be about 4.5 billion years, and we're all arriving at the point where we are, kind of in the middle of the evolution of the solar system, which will continue on for maybe another 5 billion years. So at that point, all the planets will have perfected their goal. They will reach the goal of perfection of the different qualities, that's what we're seeing. Just again, a snapshot. Through reading the Ageless Wisdom, they will give you some idea of who these beings are, what their goals are, how they're doing, where they are at this point in time, and something about the future evolution of it, and their interactions with each other, because all the planets are within the aura of the solar system, and they're all interacting with each other through the etheric, through the astral, through the mental, and higher beings. So there's a constant flow of energy and purpose that's going on throughout the entire solar system.
That's fantastic. So, and now we're going to go even sort of further out, right?
So if you'll notice, by the way, the Earth, which is in the previous slide, the Earth is a part of the energy field of the solar system, and so it's working on. So that's the one where we can get some glimpse of it, of how the evolution is working out on the planet, because we're seeing it from our point of view. But from the point of view of the other planets, they have their own goals, and each one has a different purpose.
Okay, and I mean, what I like about this particular image is you see the relative sizes of the planets and of the sun. And that is quite humbling, isn't it?
Yeah, from a physical standpoint, it doesn't necessarily represent consciousness. For example, Venus, which is down there on the right, which is next to the Earth, actually is one of the most evolved planets in the solar system, but it's certainly not the biggest.
Right. Well, that's true. And so in terms of these sacred planets, the 7 sacred planets, they have relationships with other stars, not just with our sun. Now, can you explain this? What is this about? Because one of the stars in the Pleiades, which is a constellation, and one of the stars in the Big Dipper, which is also a constellation.
Yes, the Ageless Wisdom says that the 7 stars in the Big Dipper, each one is a prototype for one of the planets, the planetary logoi in our solar system. So here you can see there's an interconnectedness, not only with the sun, but also outside the solar system itself, between the planets and stars, great beings outside the solar system.
Can I interrupt and ask you, you said prototype. Does that mean each of the planets, the sacred planets, is evolving towards being a star?
Yes, ultimately, yes. And that there's some qualities in each one. We don't understand the qualities, but the qualities of the different stars in the Big Dipper are reflected in different planets. And we don't know which planet and which star are correlated, but it's like the higher self of a planet is represented by one of those stars in the Big Dipper. The same thing with the Pleiades. There are certain qualities of love and wisdom which are coming to the planets in the solar system from the Pleiades.
Okay. Now I just realized I didn't pronounce that right. Pleiades. Is that how you say it?
Yes. You can say it like that, yeah.
Okay. And so now how far away are these constellations from us? Do you know?
Well, I don't know if it would make much sense, but if you could say 70 light years, 100 light years, 200 light years for the Pleiades, they're very close, relatively speaking. The stars in the Big Dipper are farther away, maybe in the order of several hundred light years. But, does that mean anything to people?
No, and I guess in terms of this relationship that you're talking about, there's no, the distance doesn't actually make a difference, probably.
What you see has an impact on your consciousness. So when you see the pattern of the Big Dipper, just the pattern itself has energy. And so if you pay attention to it, and if you study it and you put your mind on it, then you'll begin to receive a kind of a quality of a gestalt of energy coming from the Big Dipper. So when you talk about the constellations of stars as patterns that we see in the sky, well, those are something in our experience that we have some energetic relationship to. That would be the basis of astrology. So there's energies pouring from these various star systems that have an impact on our level of development and our lives, basically.
Okay. And then to continue moving out into a larger perspective. Now, this is not a photograph; it's an artist's rendition, right?
Right, right. It's
Um,
just very interesting looking, but
yeah.
what the idea was is that there's another great being beyond the solar system, of which our sun and solar system are just a part of one of the seven chakras, you could say, in this great being. And the Ageless Wisdom, for lack of a better term, just calls it the one about whom not may be said, because what can you say about something that you don't even know, that's beyond? But we do know that energetically, this solar system is the heart center of this great being who we talk about as, or they talk about as, the one about whom not may be said. So it's just showing that there's higher levels of organization. So our solar system, the solar logos, is part of a larger purpose from a great being who ensouls seven solar systems. And so this solar system has a part to play in that. And so that is embodied by the sun, is by the solar logos, and then then his purpose is embodied in these different planets, planetary logoi, who are working out their individual aspects of this larger purpose. So our sun is working out some larger purpose, or a small part of a larger purpose from great being that is referred to as the one about whom not may be said. So this extends out. There are other beings who are on the same par as the one about whom not may be said, or even greater, and that works its way out, and we'll show we're even going out to the level of the galaxy.
Right. And I just want to mention that the word not, it's not a word we use generally, but it just means nothing, right?
Yeah, it's a a poetic term that's
Right.
I mean, you can't say anything about something that you don't really know anything about. Somebody's told you that there's something bigger than our solar system of which we are a part.
Right. Well, that's a great name. The one
Yeah.
about whom nothing can be said. Yeah.
Even though he's telling you something about it.
Right. He is telling you something. That's right. Well, it's quite mind-boggling, and it's really fun to think about all these things. And so when you talk about an even bigger level, whoops, I think I may have jumped something there. Hang on a second. Here you're talking about, you mentioned galaxies, right? And the number of solar systems in a galaxy is mind-boggling as well. You're saying in the Milky Way there are over 200 billion solar systems,
Yes.
and that's our galaxy, right?
Right. So this is a big jump to go from the one about whom not may be said, that consists of seven stars, seven solar systems,
Hmm.
to the largest thing that we can see around us in the Milky Way, which consists of 200 billion of these, and that's an estimate, 200 billion of these solar systems. So you work from the one about whom not may be said, and maybe that's only 1/7 of a larger being, and then that's 1/7 of a larger being, and pretty soon, it just keeps going
Yeah.
on and on until you have the entire galaxy. And again, you're not seeing but a tiny portion of the galaxy, because you're only seeing the dense physical. You're not seeing the etheric. You're not seeing the astral, the mental, or the higher spiritual levels of development. So it's food for thought.
Very much so. Very much so. And now what you're saying about the Milky Way is apparently true for every galaxy?
Yes, that's what the
Okay.
Ageless Wisdom would say, is that each galaxy that we can see. Now, there's galaxies of different sizes. Some are
Mhm.
small, some are large, and this one, our galaxy is made up of, well, the galaxy is made up of stars, star systems, solar systems, and there's life on all of them. All of them have an individual purpose, which is part of a collective purpose. And so the great manifestation of a great being who ensouls this solar system. Uh, Beyond that is the one about whom not may be said, and there's levels of levels of levels beyond that until you get to the whole galaxy. So there's a being who ensouls the whole galaxy. So that's what we're just pointing to, and you can see out in space that we see actually trillions of galaxies. And then the next level of beyond that, here's a this is just saying that each galaxy is a cosmic being who is self-conscious, is cosmic conscious, and has a purpose that's working out. So that's something to think about.
Absolutely, yeah. And so you were going to talk about another level, even beyond that?
Yes. So we see pictures of our biggest neighbor galaxy called the Andromeda Galaxy, and it's actually just a part of a group. We have a group of galaxies around us, smaller galaxies, which was called the local group. The astronomers call it the local group. And so you have several dozen of these large and small galaxies that are all a part of a family.
Mhm.
So what's happening now is that in terms of our Milky Way galaxy, is the being who is the Andromeda Galaxy, they are approaching each other and eventually will merge. So you can say we have a galactic future merging with our Andromeda Galaxy neighbor. You could say one is a male and one is a female polarity, and they're merging. And what will happen is that there will be a burst of star formations of new stars. Billions of new stars will be formed in this collision between all the dust and gas. And the stars won't hit each other, but as they come together, they will basically produce, out of all the dust and gas that they have together, produce millions and millions of brand new stars. So that's
Wow.
just something that we know about our galactic future in our local neighborhood.
And so when you describe this process, is this something that scientists like physicists, people like that, they're the ones who have discovered that this is going to happen? Or is this in the Ageless Wisdom teaching?
Well, what they can do is create computer models
Mhm.
of the gravitational fields of the various galaxies, for example, and they can see the movement that these are they're moving through space. From our point of view, they don't look like they're moving very much, but they are in fact moving at thousands of miles per hour. It's just that the vast distances of 2.5 light years to the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light years, will take quite a while for them to get here. But that's why we have another 5 years before we're going to merge with the Andromeda Galaxy.
5 years? No,
5
billion
billion years, yes. A billion here, a billion there, it adds up.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, and then there's another level out that you mentioned, a galactic cluster made up of
Yes,
hundreds of galaxies, like
yes,
hundreds, not just two or three.
right. So here you can see the final destination for these spiral galaxies like the Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy will eventually be what they call an elliptical galaxy. So you see that galaxy in the center that's very bright, that looks like it's just a kind of a round light.
Mhm.
That haze around it is made up of billions of stars. So you're seeing a haze. From our point of view, it's just so far away, but in fact that haze is actually individual stars, billions of individual stars. And the farther you get toward the center, the denser and denser those stars become. So that's basically the eventual destination for all the stars in our local group. They will all merge together and become one of these giant elliptical galaxies. But the galaxies also come in groups, and so you can see all these little fuzzy patches all around the picture, and those are all galaxies of various sizes, and they're all gravitationally bound to the center of this group. So again, if you think about there's some great being here who's working out a purpose,
Mhm.
and all the other subsidiary galaxies around that are working out individual purposes of this grace one, and then it should expand your mind out to something that you can't really conceive of.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so then here in our last image of the cosmos, we've got this kind of description that consciousness and purpose exist at every level throughout cosmos, and all of it's evolving on every
Uh,
level.
yes. So this is a photograph called the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. Um, they pointed the Hubble telescope, the space telescope, at a portion of the space where they thought they couldn't see anything. It was totally empty. And so they left the camera running for 4 months. So when they basically put all the, put the picture together, it's essentially looking at a part of space which was blank, except that when you expose the camera to it, you can then see every dot on this picture is a galaxy. Every single dot on there is a galaxy. So they're looking at like 15,000 galaxies just in this one tiny picture, which is a tiny, tiny portion of the sky. So based on that, they estimated that how many galaxies are there in the universe, and so they came up with like uh, 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. And then
That's
so from that
incredible.
you can extrapolate that as that there's 2 billion trillion stars in the visible universe. And remembering that they're all working out purposes, and the being who ensouls all of these galaxies and stars in the universe is working out a purpose through them, and on down and down and down and down, all the way down to human beings, wherever they are throughout the universe. So
That's
it's
amazing.
something to think about.
Absolutely. And then this little kind of corollary that we're energetically connected to everything in cosmos. Whoops, let me go back there. Uh, through our etheric bodies, uh,
Yeah,
and through
through the astral bodies, the mental bodies, the higher mental, the Buddhic, and even qualities way beyond we can even conceive of. We just know basically what we are as souls and what the higher self is, and that's about the extent of what we can conceive of. But it goes
Mhm.
on, it goes on way beyond to infinity.
And we're connected to all of that. I mean, that actually is mind-boggling to think about. It's not just that all of that exists, but we're not just part of it, but we're actually directly connected. I mean, there's no separation, in
Yeah,
fact.
we're a part of it, all the way down to maybe you can conceive of our galaxy as one of the galaxies out of these 2 trillion galaxies, and
Mhm.
it's working out a purpose in the galaxy level, and then down to the 400 million stars that there are in our galaxy, and each one is working out a purpose that's a part of the purpose of the being who ensouls the whole galaxy. And
Mhm.
you come down all the way down to this tiny level of the one about who not may be said.
Right.
And then we're a part of that, right? And that's our so it's just the idea is to expand your consciousness a little bit.
Right. And so this is just to look at this again, because we saw it at the very start. Uh,
Yes,
the description of these processes, the evolution of consciousness, and then spiritual stimulus going on all the time through all the levels.
yes. So the being who ensouls the whole universe is working out a purpose, pouring energies down in through these cosmic groups of galaxies on down to our galaxy, down through the solar systems, down to the planets. Energy is constantly pouring in, being circulated between them, and then eventually down through human beings, and we're working out some purpose here.
Well, and I'm just seeing something that John has put into the chat that I really like. He's quoting Benjamin Creme from Maitreya's Mission, Volume 2. Hope, in the more occult sense, is the realization of the interconnectedness of all things, of your life and your daily activity with the cosmic scheme of things.
Yes.
That's
So
beautiful. Thank
try
you,
to
John.
try to make that connection, yes, between the individual self and the higher realms.
Right.
It's a topic for meditation too, to experience that.
Absolutely. And then just to close off here, we want to go back to talking about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, because they are kind of the next step for us, right?
Yes. So as you go back to the earth, go back to the planetary logos, and working out through the different kingdoms in nature, the evolution of consciousness for all the kingdoms, we come back to the spiritual hierarchy, which is the goal for humanity. And those beings are helping. That's all they do. They help humanity evolve their consciousness, and that's their full-time work. And whatever area that their race structure, their destiny lies, then the masters are there to help them.
And so we will be constantly evolving. I mean, the evolution of consciousness is the plan. That's what it's all about, right?
Yes. So the masters are the relative few of the great beings who remain on this planet. There are paths, they call them paths to higher dimensions, higher worlds. Um, One of the most well-tread ones, you could say, where most of the human masters go on this planet, they go to a path called Sirius. It's a star 8 light years away, and they work on developing higher spiritual mind on that system. Basically, it's a star system.
Hmm.
But then
Okay.
there are other paths, that for example, people masters eventually will be on paths that become planetary logoi. or some of them even solar logoi, or they control the various destiny of the rays as they move through the solar system, or they work on the cosmic astral plane to help circulate the energies of divine love down through our planet. So there's many different paths
Now
that the masters can follow.
you used the word logoi. What is that?
That's the plural of logos. So,
Okay.
so the planetary logoi, or the different planets, planetary beings in our solar system, for example.
Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. Well, now we have reached sort of the end of what you wanted to talk to us about today. And what I'd like to mention, there's a question from Billy again. How does gathering online for meditation and meetings compare to in person for those who do not have a local group? Okay, we will talk about that directly since we are going to now meditate. But before we do that, I would just like to say that we'll be back in a month, the second Saturday in April, which I believe is the 8th of April, with another program. Please join us then. And now what we're going to do is just show you some resources, and then we'll describe a little bit about this meditation we're going to do and answer Billy's question as well. So the first thing I want to do is just show these resources here, and John will also put those links in the chat so you can just copy paste them. There's a website, share-international.org, with a vast amount of information about everything we've been talking about. And there are also videos on YouTube. Just look for Share International on YouTube, and books and downloads. And in fact, there are 4 books that you can download free right away, anytime. And they're up on the screen: The Ageless Wisdom Teaching, Transmission, and Meditation for the New Age. That's the meditation we're going to do. The Awakening of Humanity, and The World Teacher for All Humanity, who is Maitreya, in fact. And moving along, I would like to also mention another program that you might be interested in, Mystic Takeaway. This is a podcast, and the host is Elisa Graf, and she talks to people who have experienced extraordinary things. There are dozens of episodes. They're very interesting because they're really quite out of the ordinary. So I highly recommend it. Another program that you might be interested in is called Planetary Makeover. We've just got an image up here of one of their programs. That one was about the healing of AIDS. And that's a program that's also broadcast regularly. I believe it's every 2 weeks. And you can find it on podcast channels. You can also watch it. It's visual. They've got it's a video, basically. So there's a lot of information out there. And then just briefly, we'll go through our attributions. We had a lot of images today. And now to talk about this meditation, transmission meditation. So yes, we are going to be doing it online. Okay, now we have a question. Are we opening up for questions? Absolutely. And please, at any time during the program, you can send us your questions. So if you have questions, now's the time. If you haven't already sent them in, please do. But let's answer Billy's question about the difference between meeting online and meeting in person. Rich, would you like to comment?
Well, due to COVID, we found that people are not able to get together as they used to be. But the substitute for that is using Zoom for transmissions, and I think a lot of people who are doing it regularly feel the energies are quite potent. So I think it's a good substitute for the fact that we can't meet together individually. But yes, the energies are definitely flowing through transmissions on Zoom.
Yeah, I would agree. I've experienced the same thing, and it's a very powerful thing to realize that this meditation, which originally was taught as a group meditation where you sit together in the same room, we're now able to do it in this way. We're thousands of miles or kilometers away from each other, and yet we're connected through these energies. There's another question here. If we are contained within the enormity of galaxies, why does this one life matter? That's a very good question. Rich?
Well, I was thinking why does one cell in your body matter? Well, you're attached to the cells in your body. You would think that's important.
Right.
But remembering there's like 7 trillion cells in your body. So if you were a great being, and there was 7 trillion cells that you were responsible for in raising their consciousness, that would be important to you. Even one cell would be important to you. So,
Well, that's true. And that why do we have medical care? I mean, because we care about all the cells. They're all
yeah,
important.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, ultimately, we're trying to evolve all the cells in our body to higher levels of consciousness, even if we don't think about it, but we are. It's
right.
part of an automatic process.
So, can you explain, Rich, planets evolving towards becoming stars and stars being produced by the union of galaxies? Okay, I guess they're two different questions in a way, but
Yes.
planets evolving towards becoming stars, is that similar to us raising the consciousness of ourselves on some level? Is it the same
Um,
process?
yeah. In astronomy, the star goes through an evolutionary process of its own, what we can see physically. And so the results of that evolutionary process produce, um, you could say, just the material out of which new stars are formed at a higher level. So in that birth process, then they have new, higher vibration material to choose from to become new stars. So that's the evolutionary process that we can see in astronomy. They can see that physically, for a new star formation. So the stars are more evolved than the previous generation of stars that they came from. So evolution is even going on at that physical level for stars.
And then planets becoming stars? Is that going through, is that the same process somehow?
Well, you can't see that on the physical level, but
Hmm.
you know that from, the level of development of consciousness, the 7 sacred planets are on 7 different ray lines, and those lines develop higher and higher, um, perfected beings, you could say, along those particular lines. So if our solar system was developing the quality of cosmic love and wisdom, then, those qualities will be saturating through all the planets here. Even though they might be on a level of intelligence, for example, they're still manifesting the higher levels of love and wisdom throughout the whole evolution of this solar system. So, you can think about it in those terms.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to think about there. That is absolutely a fact. So now, before we start the meditation, we'll explain briefly how to do it and also who shouldn't do it. Uh, Now, the explanation is really simple. Each of us will together say aloud a mantra called the Great Invocation, which we'll put up on the screen. And then after we say the Great Invocation, the instructions are simply to focus your attention at the Ajna center, one of the chakras, and it's the spot right between your eyebrows. And you can put your finger there if you're not familiar with it, and remember how that feels. And then when you're ready to meditate, you will just sit and feel that spot from inside yourself. And when you're focused there in that spot, then you will be connected to the meditation. What generally happens is that your attention will wander. That's that's just part of what happens. And so when you notice that, you say Om mentally, not with your voice. And saying Om mentally brings your attention back to this spot again. So it's basically a process of sitting and holding your attention here and then bringing it back when you realize it's gone away. And Rich, can you describe what's happening during this meditation with energies? What's taking place?
Well, the masters are working with these transmission groups. So when you started off saying the great invocation, then that will let the masters know that it's time to start the meditation. And the transmission comes from the masters down through the centers and the various people who are participating in the transmission. That energies, the higher spiritual energies, will come through the soul, and they'll be stepped down to a level that will be able to reach humanity, because normally the master's energies are so high that they don't get absorbed by humanity. So that's the purpose of transmission meditation. It's transmitting higher energies, going through the centers, the chakras of the people who are in the transmission group, and then sending the energies out. The masters send out the resulting energies, which are now stepped down and be directed to, various parts on the planet, where they're needed.
And so your description when you say step down, that I know I've heard Benjamin Creme describe it as being similar to what happens when you change the voltage on electrical current, right?
Yeah, that's the metaphor that he uses of stepping down 1,000 volts to 5 volts.
Right. So it's the same energy, but it's in a form that can be absorbed by us when it's at this lower
Yeah.
frequency.
Yeah. Our bodies are very dense relative to the masters, which are basically made out of light. And so it's difficult for rocks to absorb light.
Right. Well, we're a little less dense than rocks. Right. Okay. And then people who shouldn't do this meditation, because the energies are quite powerful, if you've got a pacemaker or serious heart problems, if you have imbalances emotionally or psychologically, the energies can kind of push you over a little bit more. Or if you're under the age of 12, and that's because your chakras haven't developed fully, and so it would be harmful for them to receive these energies, and as a result the masters would have to work to block the energies from entering your chakras to that degree, and then that's extra work for them, right? And yeah, just to reiterate that normally until the pandemic people were always meeting in person to do this meditation. Since then people are meeting virtually using Zoom or other platforms, and there are links in the chat for Zoom meetings that you can join if you're interested. If you like this meditation, you can continue doing it. There are many groups and you can choose the schedule that you prefer. And then I think we'll go straight to the meditation. Now, the very first thing we'll do is say the great invocation together. And this is an ancient mantra. Oh, what's going on with the slide here? It doesn't want to go to the next one. Let's see if I can do that. There. So the great invocation is an ancient mantra, and it was sort of reintroduced to the modern world by Maitreya in 1945. And people have been using it in transmission groups since 1970. I can't remember the year. Is it 1974? I don't remember.
1945, the great invocation was introduced. You mean transmission meditation?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1974.
So it's got different stanzas. We'll say it together, but we will just have one voice because of the interference that happens when over Zoom when you have all the voices together. And after we say the great invocation, we will listen to a message, a recording of a message from Maitreya, who transmitted that message telepathically to Benjamin Creme. There is a book of 140 messages that Maitreya transmitted in this way to Benjamin Creme telepathically. They're quite beautiful and very powerful, and they help. When you listen to the recording of this, the energies that Maitreya is transmitting through Benjamin Creme are felt. So it's a way that helps you kind of align into the meditation. And we like to do that for that reason. And then we'll meditate for half an hour, and I hope you enjoy it. Rich, would you like to say the great invocation?
Certainly.
All right, I will mute out then and set my timer.
Okay. The great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
Message number 81, September the 12th, 1979.
My dear friends, I am happy indeed to be with you once more and to magnetize your aspiration in this way. My coming evokes in man a desire for change, a desire for betterment, however expressed. My energies engender in man divine discontent. All that is useless in our structures must go. There are many such which are unworthy of man today. Man is an emerging God, and thus requires the formation of modes of living which will allow this God to flourish. How can you be content with the modes within which you now live? When millions starve and die in squalor, when the rich parade their wealth before the poor, when each man is his neighbor's enemy, when no man trusts his brother, for how long must you live thus, my friends? For how long can you support this degradation? My plan and my duty is to reveal to you a new way, a way forward which will permit the divine in man to shine forth. Thus do I speak gravely, my friends and brothers. Hearken well to my words. Man must change or die. There is no other course. When you see this, you will gladly take up my cause and show that for man exists a future bathed in light. My teaching is simple. Justice, sharing,
All right. That was 30 minutes. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for being here and joining us today. It was a real pleasure to be with you. We'll be back on April 8th for another program. Thank you to Cielito in Seattle and John in Springfield for their help with the technical aspects of the show. And have a good Saturday, everybody, and a great weekend. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.